Barber Motorsports Park in Birmingham, Alabama. It has proudly hosted the NTT INDYCAR Series some 10 times, but never before has it played host to a virtual Honda INDYCAR Grand Prix of Alabama, part of the iRacing INDYCAR Challenge Series, and for the first time here on NBC Sports. Hi folks, Lee Diffie with you, coming to you from my home in Connecticut, ready to go for this second round, part of this 6-round iRacing INDYCAR Challenge. Last weekend at Watkins Glen, it was a fantastic start, great win by Sage Karam. A lot of the drivers learnt a lot, and it was really fun. It was exciting. So I want to turn now to my regular teammates on NBC Sports as far as INDYCAR is concerned, and the expert duo of Townsend Bell. Townsend's with us from his home in Los Angeles, California, and Paul Tracy from his place in Scottsdale, Arizona. T. Bell, I want to start with you first. That was fun last weekend. It was a great way to get this going.
It was terrific, and I think it surprised a lot of people, myself included, with just how competitive it was and how serious it got right away. I expected a lot more accidents and a lot more sort of digital courage, I'd call it, knowing that it doesn't really matter. You can crash your car and start again. The reality is it does matter, and I think a week on from Watkins Glen, everybody realizes now, all the drivers know, this is for real, and this is the new world order for the foreseeable future. So you better get on your game, you better get your equipment ready, put in the practice time, and get ready to compete for your teams, your sponsors, and all the fans. We had over 500,000 people watching last weekend. Now we're also on NBCSN. It's going to be a blast and a lot more competitive, Paul, I think, this week.
Absolutely. Like, the competition level, I think, is just going to continue to keep ramping up as these guys get more and more experience. There's a lot of these young guys that really are into this and like doing it, but the old school guys like Rossi, they're pulling their hair out trying to get up to speed with a lot of these young guys. And let's not forget Jimmie Johnson's going to be out there this weekend as well. So it's going to be a really exciting race. There's going to be a couple of twists that come in this week versus the last race. So it's going to be exciting.
And Paul, not only is Jimmie Johnson back, we're excited to say the 5-time NTT INDYCAR Series champion Scott Dixon is in this 6-round series for the first time. And also joining Dixon is Robert Wiggins. A lot of excitement about Robert being in this race today. We'll talk more about the full field in just a moment, but first, some rules. And this is the state of play for today. 45 laps, just over 100 miles, and an expected fuel window of 22 to 25 laps. Now, you get 2 resets. In case you have a big incident with another car or by yourself, you'll get to reset twice. After that, you're out of the race. This is the big difference in comparison to last week's iRacing INDYCAR Challenge at Watkins Glen. At lap 15, there will be a competition yellow. A lot of the drivers' feedback after last week, they said we wouldn't mind a caution just to bunch things up a little bit. We'll see how it works today. Now let's take a closer look at the keys to the race. Townsend, what's yours?
Well, for me, it's all about get the stopwatch out and be consistent. Hit your marks. You have to really be precise at Barber. I'd say more precise than you did at Watkins Glen because of the blind corners, like what you see on the screen there, entering turn 1, or on the backside going in to turn 10, where they normally have ski poles in the real world for points of reference. You don't have that today. So hit your marks, be precise, consistent lap times key today.
Yeah, for me, it's pick your battles. With iRacing, it's so much more difficult not to get into contact with other drivers because you just don't get a sense of what's going to happen. And for these guys, if you get in contact, you damage your wing, you get a virtual tow back to the pits, and you lose probably a lap. So you got to stay out of trouble in these races and not get mixed up in a crash.
And for me, survival of the fittest, well, of course, you've got to be at the end. But how about at the beginning? Things have been wild in the practice races and even on the opening lap of last weekend's race at Watkins Glen. So try and be smart and be there for the full run. That will get you the survival of the fittest. It might even get you the checkered flag first. So there you have it. The rules of and the state of play today, the keys to the race, what PT and T. Bell think as we're gearing up for this 45-lap virtual Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama, and that is presented by AmFirst. So it's going to be a fun day here today in Birmingham, Alabama. this amazing track known as the Augusta National of Motorsports. Just so beautifully manicured, and the man behind it all, Mr. George Barber. I spoke with Mr. Barber briefly earlier today, and he said he'd been out to the venue earlier this morning. All of the flowers are in full bloom. The trees are looking wonderful. The place looks just spectacular. And he said it's a shame that the series isn't at his venue for real for another year. It would be the 11th year of the NTT IndyCar series at his facility. But he said in his lifetime, he could never have imagined having an iRacing, a virtual IndyCar race at Barber Motorsports Park. So he is thrilled with that, to have it in this way. Townsend, how do you see this race playing out today?
Well, I think qualifying is more critical than last weekend. Barber Motorsports Park, known for being difficult to pass, but it seems like every year in the NTT IndyCar series, we're treated to a pleasant surprise here because of the challenge of navigating this track. I think it's easier to make mistakes here, and those little mistakes give opportunity for a trailing car to make a move. But let's face it, the winners normally start up front in this race, and so the qualifying positions that are happening right now, we'll find out the results shortly, will really determine a lot in terms of final results today.
And PT, how about you? How do you see this one? You know how the tricky and challenging nature of Barber Motorsports Park?
Well, I've actually never raced there myself, but I've spent about 6 hours of my time this week on Barber learning the track. I've obviously raced at Watkins Glen, and I find this track to be much more difficult to navigate on a sim than Watkins Glen. You've got a lot of blind corners. You've got a lot of off-camber corners. Really easy to make a mistake and drop a wheel off in the grass, spin out, and that loses you a lot of lap time and a lot of position. So you've really got to be tidy and clean in this. Townsend, you know as well as I do, you've been on this. To get the lap time that these guys have been running in practice, it's really hard work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been on the sim as early as this morning, participating in the open practice session with all the IndyCar drivers, and there was many times I reached for the 9-iron and almost took the anger out on my new sim monitor and gaming system, because it can be so frustrating to try to piece the lap together. For me, the hard part is places like the entry to turn 1 and on the backside the entry to turn 10, where you come over these blind rises. And I just can't find the rhythm and sort of the instinct on where I turn in for those corners, and so I'm missing apexes all over the place. When I can see the circuit on entry, it's a lot easier for me. It feels more normal, I guess. But I did a 107.9 this morning, and the quicker times are low 106s, high 105. So right now I would be right at the back of the qualifying field. So it takes time for sure. You really have to invest.
Well, we look like checking in with Robert Wiccans and Simon Pagenaud. A couple of communication glitches there, but we'll see how we go. But for now, let's get closer to getting this thing ramped up. And today's invocation as we turn to IndyCar Ministries, Jason Holt.
Let's pray. God, we just thank you so much for the blessing of another day of life and for the opportunity to gather around technology and watch each and every one of these drivers showcase the amazing talents that you've blessed them with. We pray over today's events that it would go smoothly, that we would have a fun day together of racing. And in this moment, God, we just lift up all of those in the healthcare industry that are battling feverishly against this virus, that you would protect them, that you would guide and lead them, and we ask that you would intervene in a mighty way. I thank you that we can ask all this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Jason, thank you very much for that. Some good words for the drivers ahead of this 45-lap Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama. Right now, it's time for the national anthem to be performed by Miss Alabama, Tiara Pennington.
Oh, sing, can you see, like the dawn's early light, what so proudly waves at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming until these
Getting closer and closer to race start. The second in the 6-round series, the iRacing IndyCar Challenge. This is the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama. When we come back after this break, it's time to bring the action. Barber Motorsports Park, ready to fire into action with iRacing IndyCar style. And to get things fired up, let's turn now to a man who grew up literally just down the road from this racing venue, NBA Hall of Famer and Auburn University superstar, Charles Barkley.
Drivers, start your engines.
That's pretty cool to get the magical words from Sir Charles as the pace car rolls. And there is a pretty familiar front row there. Sage, Karam, Will Power, two guys who featured last week at Watkins Glen. Karam winning and Will Power finishing in third. Power is a two-time winner here in real IndyCar Series competition. Sage Karam has not, but he got his first IndyCar win last week. These two guys are iRacing specialists, and Paul Townsend, I'm sure nobody would be surprised to see them at the front here again all race long today.
I'm actually surprised to see Felix Rosenquist didn't out-qualify these guys. He's been setting the standard, Townsend, all week in terms of lap time, but Will Power last night was competing in another race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was a 250-mile event that he won last night, so these guys are putting a lot of time in.
Well, let's look at the starting grid. As you see, Karam and Power up front, separated by less than 1/10 of a second. Alex Palau, the rookie, also showed well at the last virtual race at Watkins Glen. And then another Penske driver with Padgett and Scott Speed filling in for Marco Andretti.
Padgett qualifying better than what he did last week. Go ahead, Paul. But yeah, Penske team well placed.
Yeah, those guys were really hot and heavy last week racing each other. Oliver Askew spent a lot of time on the sim this week with his engineer. He's down there in row 5.
There you see Rossi and Ericsson starting next to each other. Alexander Rossi hasn't been a huge fan of having to get into this virtual world, but he's got his head down now. He's focused. Ericsson doing a nice job outside row 7. Then Kyle Kirkwood, another driver substituting for Ryan Hunter-Reay in the DHL number 28. Nice to see Scott Dixon competing this week as well.
And you may have noticed there Jack Harvey from Meyer Shank Racing on the screen. James Hinchcliffe, who didn't even get to start the race a week ago. Hinch is looking for a better run. Jimmie Johnson, the 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champ, he is back. And a bit of a frustrating qualifying there for Santino Ferrucci, a little further back than where he would expect. PT?
Tony Kanaan back here towards the back. He had an issue with his home sim, had to go over to somebody else's house to Pit Fit Training to use theirs, and Robert Wickens just got his unit yesterday, was installed at his house, so look for him to move forward from the back of the grid.
Wiggins crashed in qualifying just moments ago, was frustrated with himself, thought he was on pace to be about 6, but he'll start from the back, Lee, as we come to the front straight for the start.
This is the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama out of turn 17, coming to the green. Let's go. This is the second. There's a crash already. Kyle Kirkwood has spun, and Jimmie Johnson got a little kind of out of shape there as well, but kept it together. It's Sage Karam in the Wicks filters machine for Dreyer and Reinbold Racing, out in front over Will Power, Felix Rosenquist, and Alex Palau in 4th.
Felix Rosenquist looking to make a move. He took the wide line, takes a little peek down the inside, but he's not quite there, Townsend.
A lot of action further back as Mclaughlin gets sideways in front of Padgett. Padgett has a check up, and Graham Rahal goes wide in that black and white car. They're 3 wide heading to the museum.
What a save by Mclaughlin. Once the cars get sideways in sim racing, it's really difficult to get them back. He saved that, but look at these guys mixing it up as we get onto the fastest part of the track. Flat out chicane through here in 5th gear.
Now, these Penske drivers have to be careful. Last week at Watkins Glen, it was Mclaughlin, Padgett, and Newgarden all being caught up in an early incident as we go back to Rosenquist on the hunt, trying to track down Will Power up front. And once again, guys, Sage Karam in the lead, comfortably, confidently, looking to make it 2 in a row.
Up and running. Sage Karam, Will Power, Felix Rosenquist, Alex Palau, and then Scott Speed, who was trying to get on the podium a week ago, and he said, I didn't feel like I had anything for Will Power, but I was getting frustrated. I wasn't just going to sit where I was, so I went for it. And you'll remember, T. Belwell, when you were speaking, saying how cool and kind of composed that he was, and then he spun. He said, I spun purely because I was just pushing too hard. I really wanted that podium.
You fans out there want to know what the new aero screen looks like to look out of? This is exactly what it looks like to look out of it. Very clear, got a center bar down the middle. These cars are going to be a lot safer, Townsend, this year once we get on the real track. And, oh, who's that? Is that...
That's Graham Rahal. That's Graham Rahal down at the museum corner. He gets passed here by at least one. That's Askew in the McLaren, followed by Pato Award. You can differentiate both McLarens by the blue front wing end fences on Askew's car. Pato Award, all black. So Graham Rahal with a huge moment. The bunny hop over the curb. We've seen exactly that kind of incident in the past, so very realistic. And his left front wing is damaged. So Graham Rahal's going to really struggle. Let's take a look as we ride on board with Rahal. That's Colton Herta to his left.
Side by side going into the fast chicane. He goes deep on the brakes, hits the curb, launches over the grass, damages the front wing, Townsend. I don't think he's going to be able to run like that. That might take a pit stop. He's going to lose a lot of lap time with that bent front wing.
Down into turn 5, inside move here for Pato Award, and nicely done. Zach Veach and Dalton Kellett, they're lining up for a shot at the 1Q car as well. So Graham Rahal with that wounded car, he had his incident at the museum turn, and incidentally on the opening lap, Alexander Rossi had a moment there as well.
It is a freakish deja vu. You guys remember a couple of years ago when Graham Rahal was up front with a damaged front wing trying to hold on. So very realistic here today as Will Power currently running in second, about a half a second back of Sage Karam, just kind of settling into a rhythm here.
Yeah, last week's race at Watkins Glen, he couldn't really hold the pace of Sage Karam and Felix Rosenquist, but he's put a lot of time in on the sim this week, and he's right there biding his time. How eerie is this to real life? He's going to be trying to save some fuel, wait for that pit stop to cycle to happen, and see if he can jump ahead of Sage.
And remember, the competition caution at lap 15, Townsend.
That's going to come fast, but you can tell Will Power just trying to consistently drive the line, save the front tires too, running in the turbulent air from Karam. All of those factors are calculated in this iRacing format. Tire wear, fuel load, car mass, aerodynamic, wind speed, ambient temperature, track temperature. It's really, really fantastic how realistic this is.
Yeah, all these cars are set up the same, so everybody's running the same setup, so you don't get a lot of engineering help from your team on these, but there's a lot of varying setups that these guys have at home. Some of these guys have very basic setups, like Conor Daly has stuff from a big box store, just a basic chair in front of a computer monitor, and there's guys like Robbie Wiggins who just got a SimCraft unit, which is very high level, very got full motion capability, so the sky's the limit in terms of what you can get in terms of sim racing, or you can do it very basic.
Scott Dixon on screen being hunted down by young American star Oliver Askew, first-year IndyCar driver for that Arrow McLaren SP team, and he's making inroads on Dixon as we ride on board. Another look at the aero screen from the driver's point of view, which we're all getting used to, and it's Scott Speed who runs fifth at the moment, chasing down Alex Palau.
Got Speed's quickest lap, a 107.4. Sage Karam, quickest overall, it looks like, at a 107.0. I'm afraid to say anything, guys. Last week when I commentated on Speed's in-car, he looped it, so going to try not to hypnotize him this time.
Yeah, he was very competitive last week, running inside the top four, and he was challenging for third on Will Power, then lost it and nosed it into the tires and lost a lot of time. So right now, just sitting there watching, waiting. This is a long race, so 45 laps around here is going to take quite a while.
If you look to the lower left of Scott Speed's steering wheel, you'll see fuel remaining. It says 0.0 on the wheel. That is actually blanked out for competitive reasons. Normally in iRacing, if you were driving, you would see exactly how much fuel you had. They don't want to give away everybody's fuel burn here, so it's a competitive advantage to zero that out.
Joseph Newgarden in that white and blue car you see there. He's starting to gain ground on Scott Speed. Newgarden, the two-time and reigning NTT IndyCar Series champ, is coming to terms with iRacing, and he put his sim together just last week. He said, boy, this is such a different world. I'm doing the best that I can. Now, there's been a couple of quick pit stops for fast repairs. Conor Daly had one, and so too did Marcus Ericsson. And that's why you see some traffic up ahead of Sage Karam here.
Yeah, he's not going to want to go a lap down because we have a competition caution, but he does move over and gets out of the way. So Conor Daly nicely gets out of the way, and he'll probably try to just hang on to the back of Sage and just see what kind of lines he's running, because Sage really is a big time gamer. He is really good at this sim racing, so Conor Daly will want to hang on to the back of him.
Conor Daly and Santino Ferrucci were the two biggest movers in last week's race at Watkins Glen, making up 13 spots from their starting position. This is not the way that Conor Daly would have hoped today here at Barber Motorsports Park to go.
Tell you who's making positions, Townsend, is Robert Wiggins has moved up quite a bit. He's up with Jimmie Johnson, I saw on the ticker. Those guys are battling each other. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's terrific. And to think that, this is really Wiccans' first race back, and fantastic that everybody's pulled together to provide him with the equipment to make it happen. Right on board now with Wiggins. Now on his sim, he's using, I believe, a shift lever as his brake and a clutch paddle on the backside of the wheel as his throttle. And that has to be a difficult adjustment, Paul, when you just think about how many years and how much muscle memory is built into the conventional way of driving. So in very short order, Wiggins has adapted and doing really, really well. Ahead of Felipe Nasser, ahead of Jack Harvey, ahead of Sebastian Bourdais. Wiggins on a charge.
Yeah, his sim system, they set it up basically exactly how Alex Zanardi drove the 24 hours of Daytona. They used a hand brake, flipped the unit around backwards because it was set up for a rally configuration. So they took that brake, turned it around backwards, so now he pushes on that brake to apply the brakes, and he's got hand throttle and hand paddles. So
Paul, did you notice the left front wing damage to Wiggins' car?
I did notice that image, and I don't see Jimmie Johnson around, so maybe they had contact with each other.
Yeah, we just got a report that those two did come in contact. This is Chip Ganassi Racing's Felix Rosenquist, runner-up from last week's event at Watkins Glen. He said he did the best he could. He just didn't have anything for Sage Karam. Maybe he has something here for Will Power. So Karam leads Power by 1.7 seconds, and then Rosenquist is under a second behind the first Team Penske driver.
We're just 6 laps from that mandatory competition yellow, so I would imagine everybody knows the field's going to stack back up. So to Paul's point at the start of this race, you're really going to have to pick your battles here. You want to make a high percentage move, just knowing that it really doesn't yield much as soon as that competition yellow comes up and restacks the field. If you can get an easy position, go for it, but a low percentage move would be ill-timed at this point.
Yeah, competition yellow's made up very quick. There's going to be a lot of action as Scott Dixon slides down the inside. I'm really impressed with the job that he's done because he really doesn't have a lot of time on the sim. He just had a baby, and so he's been busy dealing with that with his family. So he's got very limited time on the sim compared to a lot of the other guys.
That's the lap car of Kyle Kaiser, the Juncos, that gets out of the way for Oliver Askew to pursue the hunt on Scott Dixon. So Kaiser doing a nice job, very gentlemanly thing to do, even in the virtual world, to get out of the way and let the battle continue up front. Dixon now sits about 2 seconds, second and a half behind Colton Herta further up the road. Colton Herta was taken out early at Watkins Glen in an incident and had to sort of fight back from there, but he's a regular sim racer as well, competing 4 or 5 nights a week in various leagues, so he should feel right at home.
So guys, this is, of course, the Honda Indy GP of Alabama. And speaking of Honda, we would like to bring in now the president of HPD, Honda Performance Development, Mr. Ted Klaus. Ted's joining us via Skype. Hi, Ted. Thanks for making time for us. Thanks for supporting this event. And we're in a totally different era, something altogether different for many of us, but so far, so good. How are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it. I'm one of the many boomers, so I appreciate you dragging me into the future, kicking and screaming.
Well, we were mentioning earlier in the broadcast that I spoke to Mr. George Barber, the creator of this amazing facility, and he couldn't believe that he would have a virtual race, an IndyCar race at his track. Can you believe that we're doing this right now in these unprecedented circumstances?
Well, I'm really appreciative of everyone and what they're doing. I started the morning by walking the dog and watching the Red Cross sponsored Watkins Glen event. I'm still amazed at how realistic and how it gets the juices flowing, and I'm hopeful that it'll connect kind of the current world. Whoa, that might have been Robbie going backwards, with the virtual world.
And we're riding aboard one of the HPD supported cars. That is, of course, the Honda of Scott Dixon, doing a tremendous job. Scott's coming up to speed. I mean, he himself says, look, this is pretty new to me. I've done a lot of sim work, but this iRacing stuff is new, but he's running well inside the top 10.
Scott looks good. I know it's all new, but I think that's one of the, if you think about these athletes and how they take on challenges and how those challenges can create interesting growth that you can't even predict. So I'm excited about what iRacing can do for both young and old, and connecting across various generations. So it's exciting to see what will unfold.
Well, again, Ted, thanks very much for your support of this and for your time. There he is, President of Honda Performance Development, Mr. Ted Klaus, enjoying the action from his home. And there was quite a bit of action there in front of Scott Dixon. So the order is Sage Karam, 1.5 seconds out in front of Will Power. Rosenquist is third. Palau is fourth. Newgarden, Scott Mclaughlin, Simon Pagenaud, the Penske trio there, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And then Colton Herta. That may have been Scott Speed was involved in an accident, because Speed was right in amongst that group. It was a fascinating scrap between Newgarden and Speed and McLaughlin. So Scott has dropped down to 16th place.
Yeah, Wiggins still moving up. He's moved up to 16th now. There's Ed Carpenter in 21st. Rossi sliding backwards, and Jimmie Johnson in 22nd. But Townsend, I got to say, these systems now, what an opportunity for these guys to get out and keep their mind sharp, keep their focus on driving, practicing on the track, working with their engineers. And not only that, the kids out there can race against these guys and really learn these tracks.
Well, who you calling a kid? I'm 44. I've been practicing with these guys this morning. So you were talking about that last week. Let me just be clear. This is totally agnostic age-wise. Anybody can participate in iRacing. But here's what I'm thinking right now, strategy-wise. Dixon starting to reel in Colton Herta, but this mandatory caution at lap 15, I think a lot of people are going to stay out and only want to make one pit stop here because I think you're going to want track position. So if you feel confident in your position like Colton Herta, you're going to want to go as slow as you can to preserve your tires while maintaining track position, knowing the competition yellow is just a lap and a half away.
What's your gut tell you about tire life, though? Just on the one stop, tire life will be good all the way to the end? Well, I guess we'll wait and see.
I think it's challenging, but I can't imagine you can afford to give up track position in favor of tire life. So I think you'll see people pitting closer to that halfway point, lap 22, 23, and try to split the difference. But here comes Mclaughlin. This is interesting. This is before the yellow. Mclaughlin to pit lane.
By the way, the Team Penske driver who had to get up at 2 in the morning Australian time, his time to be competing in this, has been working with the Team Penske engineers. They've been running some models. They've been working out their strategy. Yes, folks, that's how seriously these drivers and teams are taking this iRacing IndyCar Challenge very seriously.
I think that could be really clever, Paul. If you pit at lap 14 here, and depending on how many laps the competition yellow goes for, could Mclaughlin be able to stretch his fuel load to the end? You can really do about 25 laps, they say, full stint, but maybe he'll save fuel and benefit from the stack up under the yellow. That could be really interesting to watch later.
Absolutely. He's going with the undercut, and we're going to go yellow. So in real life, on a road course, you always want to get your pit stop done before the yellow comes out, right? So all these guys are going to pack up here in a couple laps, and if they pit right after the yellow, he's going to go right to the front.
And this competition caution should last about 3 laps. You're looking at the Wicks Filters Dallara of Sage Karam, last week's winner. Today's race leader, Karam, led 43 of the 45 laps last weekend. Here's Felipe Nasr, who's racing from his home in Brazil in the Gallagher Carlin Chevrolet. It's the blue car in the middle there with damage on the left side of his front wing.
Yeah, he's missing the front wing, but still fighting with Graham Rahal. Is Graham Rahal in contact with Bourdais? Or is that Santino? That's Santino. So he's still running good laps without a front wing. I know how that goes.
Meanwhile, just got an update that Scott Dixon apparently spun, has dropped down to 12th place. And here's the caution, lap 15, mandatory competition caution, Sage Karam the leader. Everybody will have to stack up. It'll be interesting to see who comes to pit lane during this.
And remember, of the front runners, Scott Mclaughlin has pitted. By the way, an update on Scott's speed. He had contact with Joseph Newgarden in turn 16. That's why he dropped from that top 5 battle all the way down into the mid-teens. So cruising under this mandatory, this competition yellow. Someone's run off there on the outside of turn 2, up into the gravel trap. And the pace car picks up. Who is that there? Is that Marcus Ericsson? Is it Scott Mclaughlin?
That's Marcus Ericsson. He gets the wave by. So Sage Karam. And who's going by there?
I think that's either
that was Scott Speed.
Scott Speed, yep. So there he is, Sage Karam, used to being out in front in these iRacing IndyCar Challenge events. This is the 2nd of 6, and it just feels great to go racing. Grand Prix of Alabama continues here on NBCSN. Lee Diffie, Townsend Bell, Paul Tracy with you from Barber Motorsports Park. Actually, we're not at Barber Motorsports Park. We're at our homes in Connecticut, California, and Scottsdale, Arizona. But it's great to have you with us wherever you're watching, here in the United States or around the world, Canada, in the UK via Sky Sports F1. It's good to be talking about INDYCAR racing, isn't it? We're under a mandatory caution, and you will see, or will we see, them dive for the pits. It was set at lap 15, and it's good. The series, iRacing, everybody involved is listening to the drivers' feedback on what they would like to happen in these races, how they feel the races are happening, what's the general conduct, strategy, everything. This is a work in progress, but it's a fun work in progress, and each and every week you'll see something a little bit different. Like next week in the third round, it's the driver's choice, and I think, I'm not speaking out of turn, we might be headed for an oval. Stand by for more information on that. So Watkins, Glen, then Barber Motorsports Park, and an oval somewhere next week is what I am hearing. And then there's a random draw for the fourth round, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas for the fifth round, and then a non-IndyCar regular track for the sixth and final round, kind of like a driver's dream choice track. So we'll see what they nominate there.
Well, guys, just like in real life, yellows breed yellows, but I think what's going to happen here as these guys run around under caution, Townsend, the tires get cooler, these guys get amped up, they're going to start trying to make moves. I think you're going to see some accidents as we come back to green here on the next lap.
Well, I think what's going to be really interesting, too, is what happens with the pit stop sequence right before the break. You saw Scott Mclaughlin in that Team Penske shell car come to pit lane just before the yellow on lap 14. He's going to have to save a lot of fuel to make it to the end, but if he can do it, when all these guys have to pit under green, he's going to probably leapfrog to the front as we see another car come for a pit stop on the final yellow lap. I think we're one more to green. That's what I hear from race control. We'll have to keep an eye on it. The other thing I find fascinating is the engineers are all logged in here. Every driver's regular race engineer in the IndyCar series is talking to his driver right now. Simon Padgett knows Ben Bretzman's giving him fuel burn numbers per lap and speculating how far they can go.
So excited to say that next week, every day on NBCSN is Racing Week in America. And our dear friend from the NASCAR world at NBC Sports has more on that. Have a look, take a listen.
Hey racing fans, this is Jeff Burton. All next week, some of the biggest names in NASCAR compete in the eSports Short Track iRacing Challenge. Here's how it works. We have 7 races in 4 days. And it's some of the biggest drivers, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson. They're going to be competing on some of the sport's most iconic racetracks. And on the line is a miniature grandfather clock, just like this one, for the champion. It all starts Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern on NASCAR America.
Jeff, thanks so much for that. And again, next week, Racing Week in America. You may have noticed on NBCSN that the weeks during this coronavirus pandemic, we have been really filling the programming airtime with a lot of your favorite stuff. There was Hockey Week in America. That was last week. This week, we are still in Football Week in America. And starting next Monday is Racing Week in America. All of your favorite forms of motorsports that you enjoy here on NBC Sports. And all of us, the regular faces and voices that you are used to hearing, will be doing special pieces here and there all throughout the week and operating as we all are from our respective homes all around the country. So, Paul, Townsend, we've had a lot of fun with it already. I know you guys are looking forward to that as well.
Absolutely. Anything that comes on TV nowadays that's new, that's exciting, watching right here with Sage Karam, who's not a full-time driver. He's a part-time driver in the series, but he's really got this figured out as we're getting ready to come back to green. We're down here in the last couple corners.
Okay, how is this strategy call going to work out for Team Penske, Scott Mclaughlin? How is it going to work out for the man who dominated last week, who's at the head of this field? Pennsylvania's Sage Karam sees green. Let's go racing again at Barber Motorsports Park. Newgarden pulls out of the line. He's trying to make a move there, but Karam has been spectacular in this iRacing IndyCar Challenge. The black and blue car is Felix Rosenquist in the NTT Data car, and the familiar yellow and blue there of Alexander Rossi not on the lead lap as they all try and push their way through.
Simon Pagenaud lost a couple spots on that restart. Oh, got a little accident in the back there. Cold tires on the brakes, locked up the rears and got sideways as Colton Herta now comes down the straightaway. He's making his way back through the field.
I think that might have been Rossi with a moment, as there's a lot of side-by-side action. Really tough to go too wide through this corner, and there's some drama. Kirkwood wide in the DHL car, and we ride on board with Dalton Kellett.
Oh, you're not going to go two abreast through there. That's a wide open in fifth gear as one of the
cars. There goes Hinch. That's James Hinchcliffe.
And there's Graham Rahal in the One Cure Honda. Up and over, there's Zach Veach in the black, yellow, and blue Andretti Autosport Gainsbridge entry inside. Big move,
Veach goes for a big slide into the grass. He's backwards. He's going to go all the way to the back of the field. He can't get turned around. He's got to wait for everybody to go by. We're back on Will Power. He's being followed very closely by Felix Rosenquist now, is starting to put the pressure on Will Power.
And you can tell here that Sage Karam up front is pushing really hard right now. Remember, the drivers have access to push to pass. 10 pushes at 10 seconds each total for the race. This is the time to put a gap on everybody, because you're probably going to be making a green flag stop here for all of these front runners in the next 2 or 3 laps.
Jimmie Johnson just moved up, got by Kanan. Zach Veach moved back to 19th with that spin. But the pressure now is on Will Power to hold off the Ganassi driver of Felix Rosenquist.
Here's Veach. Up and over. Turn 13, 14. Watch this. Things are going to go sideways real quick.
Big opposite lock on the brakes. That's a tricky corner, Townsend. You know, you're very fast going in fourth gear, and then you kind of got to just lightly trail brake going into the corner, and the back end can get away from you really easy.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things that I've had to adjust to, is just learning the finesse of the trail brake, especially on the IndyCar. It's so sensitive and very easy to do what Veach did there, just over-rotate the car and just miss the braking point that little bit much.
Mclaughlin now up to 9th, and he's done a pit stop. So if these guys pit here pretty soon, he's going to move to the front. That early pit stop, I think, is really going to pay off.
But will he be able to stretch that fuel is the question for Scott McLaughlin. He is 8.5 seconds behind the race leader, Sage Karam. His stop was 7.8 seconds. It's going to be close. It's going to be super close.
He spent a total, McLaughlin did, of 29.9 seconds on pit lane, it looks like. So call it 30 seconds.
Whoa, Rosenquist.
Yeah, Rosenquist loses it on the brakes into turn 1. He locked the rears and stepped sideways. Amazing catch there as he goes into turn 1. That's a real fast section of the track right there, third gear.
So if McLaughlin sits about 10 seconds back of Sage Karam, but he has it's a 30 seconds on pit lane, almost certainly he's going to go to the front and lead by 20 seconds. Then the question will be, how much fuel can McLaughlin save to try to make it to the end?
Exactly. With Karam on the charge and him kind of nursing it home. Getting a report that, unfortunately, for the second week, Felipe Nasr, the Brazilian, the former F1 driver, may be out of this race. He was involved in an incident last week at Watkins Glen. He was running well in this one early on, but no Felipe Nasr at the moment. Alex Palau, the Spaniard, who is driving from his place in Girona in Spain, is doing a really nice job. He learned a hard lesson last week when he went out. He had a couple of hiccups on his pit stops and went out on old tires and then crashed. And he said, I won't be doing that again. I'll be more organized on my stops. And here is the young Spaniard doing a super job. Runs a coffee shop in Spain with his girlfriend, and that's where he's racing from right now.
Guy who's doing a super job watching the ticker on top is Robert Wiggins. He's already now just outside or right around the top 10. Let's not forget he started, Townsend, dead last in the field. So steadily moving forward is Robert Wiggins in his first race back after the injuries he suffered at Pocono.
Yeah, terrific for Wiccans to be out there, and Palau once again showing that he could be top of the rookie class in this 2020 IndyCar season. When we get back to regular racing as well, he was so highly rated, as we see Robert Wickens comfortably cruising in 11th place right now. Up ahead is Scott Speed, so he'll be trying to track him down. Scott Speed's already made 2 pit stops, it looks like.
He made one after the contact with Newgarden, and then he's made a scheduled one since. So Speed is definitely one to keep an eye on as well. But isn't this a feel-good story for Robert Wickens? Back in the familiar colours in the Lucas Oil Arrow McLaren SP IndyCar. This is his first form of competition since the Pocono crash in August of 2018. And then, of course, we saw him and his now wife, Carly, take that very memorable run around the Toronto street course in front of his home crowd in Ontario, Canada last year, which just brought tears to all of our eyes, really. But Robert loved it. He scared Carly by going quick around the track, around the street course. They loved it. But this is a major step in Robert Wickens getting back to full-time racing, or racing in some regard, because he is determined to do that.
And he loves.
It sounded to me, Paul, like on the onboard there with Wickens, since he last pitted about 8 laps ago, it sounds like big-time fuel save for Wickens. So he's trying to go to the end, like Mclaughlin, without stopping. We're 21 laps from the finish, so that'll be the story in the closing laps with these drivers like Mclaughlin and Wickens, Graham Rahal, that all pitted there around that competition yellow, in McLaughlin's case just before it. Can they make it to the end?
And let's not forget, Robert Wickens just got his unit from SimCraft the day before yesterday. He got it up and running yesterday, and he said, I actually talked to him. He said, man, he goes, after driving it for a couple of hours, he goes, I actually got physically very tired. These things have direct drive steering boxes on them, so it gets a lot of load in the wheel. There's a lot of kickback. The pedals that he's not using, these guys have spring-loaded pedals that feel actually just like real race car pedals. So there is maybe not as much physicality in terms of G-forces on the body, but in terms of steering the car, braking, it's very similar to a real race car.
Pato Award on screen in the Arrow McLaren SP machine. Let's take you back just a few laps ago. He had quite the incident. Here it is.
Oh, big off there. Dropped the wheel. Not too bad. If you get into that inside wall, you'll knock the nose right off that thing. But a quick little spin, only lost 1 position.
And the next time you have the opportunity to go to Barber Motorsports Park, really is the Augusta National of Racetracks. That's a great spot to watch, by the way, because the cars do get loose. They get light up over that hill, and it's pretty spectacular. This is Will Power.
Will Power's made his pit stop as well in that cycle there. So we're seeing guys now starting to make their pit stops. Penske guys seem to be on a different program of stopping early, Townsend.
Yeah, except Simon Pagenaud. He has not stopped yet, so he stays out. Mclaughlin now up to 3rd.
Rosenquist and Simon Pagenaud, the only front runners yet to stop. Alex Palau is in the pit lane.
How many times have we seen this battle? Scott Dixon and Will Power on track battling in the real life and on the sim. Will Power has made his stop, so he's going to need to make quick work of Scott Dixon and try to make up for that time that he spent in the pits.
This is down in 8th and 9th.
Dixon's on fuel save mode right now. He's 9 laps into his stint, so he's got to make things work a lot longer than Will Power. So Will Power will be urgently trying to get by here, knowing Dixon's situation.
A massive difference in terms of iRacing experience. Will Power has more than 150 iRacing road course wins. This is Felix Rosenquist in the NTT Data Honda for Chip Ganassi Racing. And Scott Mclaughlin for Team Penske inherits the race lead. Now the question begs, can he stay there? He was the first of the front runners to pit. Here he is. He has been on this massive weight loss program. Not that he needed to lose much, but he has lost more than 20 pounds in anticipation of his IndyCar race debut. Not his iRacing debut, but his real IndyCar debut, which was meant to come at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis. That still may be his first run for Team Penske for real. And he just said, the lighter I am, the better it'll be.
These are the 2 guys right here. These are the 2 guys right here that are going to challenge Mclaughlin for the win, as Sage Karam trying to get by Felix. These two are the guys that he's going to have to beat over the curbs. They make contact. This is playing right into Scott McLaughlin's hands. The two fastest guys out there just had contact.
And it looks like Sage Karam, I'm not sure if his front wing is going to get away without any damage there, if he'll get away without damage to the front wing. But let's take another look. Rosenquist and Karam headed toward the museum corner. Rosenquist with a little bit of a block there up the inside. Leaves him a little bit of room, and now Rosenquist is in the grass, out of control, and across the front, and I could see that Karam's wing sort of flipped up, and then it might have magically fixed itself. We'll have to see what the pace is like for Sage Karam.
Well, we're going to have to see if they bring in the chief steward and see if there's any type of a penalty for that, because there is driver etiquette in iRacing. If you run into the back of a guy, you could also get a drive-through as Felix Rosenquist loses it.
Well, good evasive action there from Simon Pagenaud, but this has been a wild 2.5 miles for Felix Rosenquist, desperate to win in the iRacing IndyCar Challenge. The revised top three, Scott McLaughlin, Graham Rahal, Scott Speed, Robert Wiccans is up to 4th place, and then Will Power, Alex Palau, and then Pagenaud, who had that narrow miss right there. Graham Rahal, who was also one of the early ones to pit, he dives for pit road. I guess he thinks he cannot go all the way to the end.
Jimmie Johnson has now moved into the top 10 as well, so the leaderboard is shaking up with all these pit stops that are happening.
And this is really going to come down to a battle between those that are rich, meaning rich on fuel, and those that are lean. Right now, that's McLaughlin, Speed, and Wiggins lean on fuel. Power, Plow, and Pagenaud, and then Dixon kind of in the middle. But it's really going to be Power, Plow, and Pagenaud in full tilt, full rich mode, pushing hard all the way to the finish.
But look at Scott McLaughlin. He has now, with Graham Rahal out of the way. Oh, Santino Ferrucci's going to have a massive crash there. An altercation with Sage Karam.
Sage Karam has got he's got the red mist going on, guys, because he's seeing the leader way out in front, and he knows he was in control of the race, and he's making moves and banging off of guys. Kind of reminds me of me.
But look at McLaughlin with now Rahal diving for the pits. McLaughlin's got a 17-second lead. Here he is here in the Shell Team Penske machine. 17 seconds over Scott Speed. And you've got, what have we got left? 16 laps to go?
Yeah, he can lose a second. He can lose a second a lap, Townsend.
Let's listen in, and let's just be quiet and see how much fuel he's saving. Not very much. I get the feeling there, but the McLaughlin feels like he needs to just push. He just did he did get the time there as best as a 107.0, so I'm not sure if that's fuel save or not. He might be thinking, I need to push and open a gap and make one more stop.
So Rahal was 24 laps since his last stop, and that's why he came in. So it's a big question mark over whether Scott McLaughlin can make it.
Oh, Sage Karam, we hear, has a speeding penalty in the pits. This is just like real life. You cannot speed in the pits, so he's going to get a penalty as well. Wiggins up to 3rd now. McLaughlin leading, Scott Speed 2nd. Now Wiggins up to 3rd place from the back of the grid.
What a performance. And here are the two Ganassi cars. 2 of the 3, I should say, the orange and blue and white. Of course, the 5-time champ Scott Dixon in the PNC Bank entry, and then the NTT data car of Felix Rosenquist, who has had a very uncharacteristic for Felix Rosenquist, a very wild race, multiple incidents, and he now finds himself back in 8th ahead of Oliver Askew and Colton Herder.
Hey guys, just getting updates from Kevin Lee, NBC Sports reporter on Virtual Pit Lane. He's telling me that the Penske boys on Pagenaud's car are talking about how there's no way McLaughlin's going to make it. He'll have to stop one more time and lose about 28 seconds. Right now, McLaughlin's gap, 19 seconds to Scott Speed and growing. So McLaughlin is head down,
going
full push mode, trying to get to a 28, 29 second gap.
Yep.
Oh,
that's
Sage
Colton
Karam, Colton Herta and Pato Award. These guys battled each other in Indy Lights. That looked like an Indy Lights deal all over again.
And that was a little further down, fighting for a spot in the top 10. 15 to go.
if McLaughlin's on the verge of needing fuel, and it looks like McLaughlin's just maybe come to pit lane, I believe.
He has, and we're hearing that Sage Karam has dropped out of the race.
Wow.
Last weekend's winner will not be a finisher here at Barber Motorsports Park.
Remember what Paul said at the top of the race? Paul, you called it. You said choose your battles. And unfortunately for Rosenquist and Karam, things got pretty feisty there with still a lot to run in this race.
Yeah, there's going to be points awarded at the end of this. It's a 6-race championship, so with him dropping out of the race and winning last week, that's really going to hurt his points.
McLaughlin's stop was 7.7 seconds, so virtually mirroring his first of 7.8 seconds in the same delta of just under 30 seconds to perform that stop. Scott Speed is the race leader.
Scott Speed filling in for Marco Andretti. Marco Andretti doesn't have a sim unit set up yet at his house, so Scott Speed is stepping in. He's their driver in Global Rallycross, so stepping in to help the team out, Andretti Autosports.
I talked to Marco Andretti this morning. He said he will compete in one of the upcoming ovals with Sage Karam's backup sim unit, both of those guys in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. But he said Sage's primary unit is faster than his backup unit. So the selection of simulator equipment, pretty finite and detailed these days. Drivers looking for every advantage they can get. Now this is going to be an interesting battle. We think both of these cars can go to the end. Mclaughlin and his teammate Will Power, 13 laps to go. This could be the battle for the win.
Well, and if you look at those top three, Scott Speed, Scott McLaughlin, and Will Power, the gap between Speed and McLaughlin, first to second, is 7.2 seconds. That's come down by nearly half a second. McLaughlin is slicing time out of Scott Speed. It's down to 6.8 seconds now with 13 to go. Watch the young Kiwi surge from second place towards the former F1 driver. There goes Robert Wiggins out into the gravel trap.
What an incredible save from Wiccans. I can't believe he hung on to that. Still has that left front wing damage. Wow.
Big time loose in that fast chicane. He lost it. It stepped sideways out in the grass through the gravel, collected it and kept going. He only lost a couple positions. But the battle at the front with McLaughlin is closing down on Speed, but Will Power is all over the back of his teammate.
Down to 5.7 seconds now, first to second.
I think Div Speed's just trying to save fuel. He's 2 seconds a lap slower. I just can't imagine he can make it to the end as we see a replay here.
I don't know if there was contact. There might have been a little bit of contact.
Wiggins' car, all kinds of damage. No engine cover, left front wing, but he's going to hang on and soldier to the finish as Ericsson is caught up to the back of Robert Wiggins.
Robert Wiggins is doing a phenomenal job. This is unbelievable, the job he's done.
11th place at the moment for Robert Wiggins. Wow, it has been plenty of action today here at Barber Motorsports Park. Scott Speed, Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, the top three. Alex Palau, the young Spaniard and rookie in the NTT IndyCar Series, is fourth. Pagano, Rosenquist, Dixon seventh, Herder eighth, O'Ward and Askew.
Interesting situation there with Scott Speed coming up on an Andretti teammate car. Alexander Rossi a lap down. He moves over to help out his teammate. Will he provide any interference now for McLaughlin? We'll have to watch this.
And guys, while we watch it, we are joined by Sage Karam, two-time pole sitter, last weekend's winner, but he's catching his breath. It's all over. Tell us about today.
Yeah, I think we had the speed again today. We were sitting pretty good after qualifying. I just wanted to keep the Wicks car, Reinbold racing car up front. It was just going our way and just kind of cruising, getting to the yellow flag, got to the yellow, had a really good restart, and was just cruising again, checking out. And it's just, it's unfortunate. I got stuck behind Bourdais before I was going to pit. He just kept blocking me, and and that screwed my in lap and out lap, and then that's why Rosenquist got out next to us there. And I didn't see the replay or anything, but from what I saw in the car, it just seemed like I was aggressive, he was aggressive. He came to the right side of the track, had a wing there, and I don't know if we touched at that spot, but he overshot the corner then, and I tried to go back underneath, and then he just chopped there, and we ended up making contact. Both racing for a win. I like Felix. He's a great kid, great driver. So it is what it is. Having a lot of fun with this though. Having the guys on here, giving the fans something to watch, the sponsors. Having the cars out there and everything. It's a lot of fun.
And there's a lot more action this week, for good or for bad. What did you make of the mandatory yellow, the competition yellow? You a fan of that?
No. It worked out. It worked to, I think, what it was supposed to do. It tightened the field back up, and I had a lead again, about the same as I had before the yellow. So it didn't hurt us by any means. Just what hurt us was, the lappers just not really moving, and I couldn't get around Bourdais, and just really screwed me up. And I think in reality, I think we should have done did the yellow later in the race and did like maybe a 15-lap shootout, do all the pit stops, and then call the yellow, get the field together, and do like a sprint race. I thought that would have been really cool.
Sage Karam from Dreyer and Reinbold Racing. Thanks very much, Sage. So will not be back-to-back wins for him. We'll see who gets this win with 9 laps to go. There's Scott Mclaughlin just going out of shot. He's within under 3 seconds of Scott Speed, the leader, and this is Will Power in the Verizon entry for Team Penske. So it is Andretti Autosport, Team Penske, fellas.
Paul, you can appreciate this. I'm hearing from pit lane that Kevin Lee reports that Will Power's driver chat was disabled because he was getting so mouthy on the radio about lap traffic. So now he's got to deal with NBC's own James Hinchcliffe there in the Genesis car, trying to deal with lap traffic and make moves to catch his teammate there, Scott McLaughlin. 9 laps to go.
Just like real life. So Scott McLaughlin has pulled a bit of a gap now on his teammate who's just got by. And there's
Rossi
right there getting out of the way. So it's clear sailing. He's got open road. He's only a couple seconds now behind the leader, Scott Speed, who's saving fuel trying to get to the end. Can he make it, or will he run out of fuel?
I really don't think Speed can make it. 23 laps on this stint. He would have to pull off some sort of virtual miracle on fuel saving, I think, to pull it off.
Updating you that Marcus Ericsson in the Husky Chocolate Chip Ganassi Honda is out. Here is Scott Speed. The red and white car is Scott McLaughlin. Now, while McLaughlin might be new to the NTT IndyCar Series, he's not new to iRacing. He's got more than 170 road course iRacing wins. And Scott Speed has a lot as well. So you're looking at 2 guys. Actually, the top 3 guys are all very well versed in iRacing competition. But how about that strategy call from Team Penske and the McLaughlin side of the camp? It may just work out because there's still plenty of time to go. 7 laps left, and the margin is now only 1.5 seconds. Scott Speed to Scott McLaughlin.
Well, he hasn't won this race yet. He's got to get by Speed. He can catch him, but for sure Speed is going to put up a fight, and these guys could get into each other. But right now, Scott McLaughlin has the strategy, and he's the fastest car on track.
There's the gap, first to second.
Looking out the back of Scott Speed's car, if you look down at that Honda exhaust coming out there, I love the effect of the thermal heat. Just to add some realism, if you look at the suspension and the inside of the tires, you'll see sort of a blurred image. That is not a bandwidth issue. That is realism. The heat thermals coming out of the exhaust is Scott Speed doing everything he can to hold on. McLaughlin now is right there, Paul, all over the back of the 98.
Yeah, he's low on fuel right now, which is fast. The lower you get in fuel, the faster you can go. But McLaughlin is now right there. We'll see if he can make a move out of turn 2.
All right, PT. Great for Will Power, because Power is really going to be able to close up now on McLaughlin. This is going to get really interesting.
So you guys need to call it. Where's he going to make the move? You don't have to, because he's already done it. New race leader is Scott McLaughlin.
I think he might be out of fuel. He's out of fuel.
Power to second, and there's other cars out of fuel as well. That's Pato O'Ward, I think. Oh, big contact with the wall.
Looked like O'Ward was maybe swerving to pick up the last little bit on the fuel feed. His Speed is trying to nurse it, presumably to pit lane. Now Will Power, he has the fuel, so does McLaughlin. This will be a Team Penske battle to the finish if these guys hang on.
Will they have team orders? Will they say, hey, 1-2 for Team Penske, or will they let them fight this out to the finish?
Well, this is a trans-Tasman battle. It's New Zealand versus Australia here. Scott McLaughlin, the Kiwi, Will Power, the Aussie, and the guy who has been entrenched at Team Penske for so long and won a championship and won the Indy 500 up against the youngster from the Southern Hemisphere who wants to be part of Team Penske here in the Northern Hemisphere because he's a two-time Australian supercar champion for DJR Team Penske, the legend Dick Johnson and his racing organisation that merged with Roger Penske several years ago, so successfully so. And here is Will chasing his younger rival and younger teammate down into turn 5.
Well, if there's any doubt about how realistic this would be, think about this, guys. 10 races at Barber. Team Penske's won 8 poles and 6 race wins, and now Team Penske leading up front with 5 to go.
A little bit wide there for Scott McLaughlin. It's no secret that he wants to go IndyCar racing in his future full-time. That would be a dream come true for him. But for that to happen, more than likely one of these drivers would have to vacate. Penske Racing typically doesn't run 4-car programs. They will in certain instances for partial seasons, but this is auditioning for a full-time job, Lee.
Yep, and what better place? There's no better place to prove it because with no real racing going on now, this is your platform to prove your worth. 4 laps to go of this under 2.5-mile track, Barber Motorsports Park. Mclaughlin Power, then Scott Speed still hanging in there over Alex Palau, and then Simon Pagenaud. Rosenquist is 6th, Colton Herter, Oliver Askew. Wiggins is now up to 9th, and Dalton Kellett with an awesome performance in the top 10. Can tell you that Pato Award after that huge crash, he is out, and so too is Tony Kanaan.
Will Power starting to close in. We're coming down at the end of this lap with 3 to go. He's stalking the back of McLaughlin now, Townsend.
He is. Power draws ever closer. But I'm just sitting here thinking, how cool is it, Lee, that McLaughlin, who performed so well in V8 supercars, won the championship for Team Penske. And Lee, you know the story better than anyone. I think he was so urgently asking for a chance to come to America and race in Indy cars. This must be incredibly gratifying to demonstrate ability in IndyCar, even in a virtual world. There's no doubt that the guys at the front of this race right now are some of the top talent in IndyCar.
Yes, it is indeed.
It is so difficult for everybody out there watching. I've driven on a sim, Townsend, you've driven on a sim. I find it incredibly more difficult to stay concentrated and not make mistakes rather than doing it in real life. So the job that these guys are doing, not making mistakes, is phenomenal.
This guy, this 26-year-old Kiwi who leads this race, he was discovered by Gary Rogers, long-time V8 supercar team owner. And he created so many stars in the supercar scene in Australia. And McLaughlin then went on, moved away, and he really shot to prominence when joining the DJR Team Penske organization. And he made no bones about his desire to come race in the United States, whether that be NASCAR or IndyCar. Of course, he got to see firsthand what Marcus Ambrose did. And Marcus actually told McLaughlin, you need to go. If you want to go, go for it. And that's what he is doing. And he's proving it, that he deserves to be here now in the virtual world, but also when he got to test the IndyCar earlier this year. Although it be briefly at Circuit of the Americas in the wet, he tested at Sebring and also Texas Motor Speedway and was right on the pace straight away. So if there's ever anybody ready to slot in to an NTT IndyCar, it is Scott McLaughlin, who is with less than 2 laps from home and victory in this Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama. But there's traffic up ahead. It looked like Scott Dixon.
Yeah, we got some lap traffic, and this is in a bad spot that they're coming up to for lap traffic. Will Power looks pretty strong through this sector, Townsend, so you don't want to get hung up.
Yeah, but talk about patience and a steady hand on the tiller. Scott McLaughlin, I'm getting the updates from Kevin Lee on pit lane. Still 5 push-to-passes remaining for McLaughlin. We do not know what Will Power has left in the bag. We're trying to find out, but McLaughlin being very, very mindful of push to pass all race, leaving himself the ability to stretch some extra horsepower if he needs it here to defend to the line.
Scott Dixon trying not to go a lap down, so if he makes a mistake in front of McLaughlin, spins, goes off, goes in the grass, that could cause him problems and leave the door wide open for Will Power, who's right there.
Hey, by the way, what's the relationship like between McLaughlin and Dixon as fellow Kiwis? What can we expect here? There it is.
Dixon's his hero. You know, Scott McLaughlin grew up looking at and just admiring all of Scott Dixon's accomplishments in IndyCar racing. And so for him to actually be on the same track as Scott Dixon is a huge buzz. So this is going to be something I'm pretty sure we'll see more of in the future, talking about McLaughlin and Dixon and Power, etc. So Team Penske continues to stamp its authority on this Barber Motorsports track. Helio Castro Neves got the first win in 2010. There's been a decade of IndyCar racing here, but this is the first time it's been in the virtual world, and certainly here on NBC Sports. And we're going to see a first-time winner in Scott McLaughlin. Definitely not a first-time winner in iRacing, but as far as this 2020 IndyCar Challenge, Power has come close.
McLaughlin locked up in the last corner. I thought he might go off, but he hangs on, Div.
Here it is. Checkered flag. Scott McLaughlin wins the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama in spectacular style, with a different strategy to all, and then pushed hard in that middle stint, and it paid off as he hunted down Scott Speed, got by him. Speed, by the way, did have enough fuel to get to the end. So it's a Penske 1-2 with Scott McLaughlin and Will Power, and then Andretti Autosports, Scott Speed. But how about that? He had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning at his place in Australia to do this race, and getting up early had no ill effects. Two races in this 6-race iRacing IndyCar Challenge, and 2 different winners. Sage Karam last week, Scott McLaughlin this week.
And who was the genius at Team Penske that helped McLaughlin with that 2-stop strategy just before the competition yellow? They went full ridge with the 2-stopper, Paul, and it paid off. Also, one of the faster laps of the race, McLaughlin 106.9, Will Power with a 106.8.
Yeah, that's qualifying pace. So unbelievable job by these guys, and you got to give a hats off to everybody that was involved in this race. We saw a lot of action. We saw some crashes, but generally pretty clean racing.
So there you have it. Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, Scott Speed on the iRacing IndyCar Challenge podium. How about Alex Palau responding from last week's frustration to get inside the top 5, and Simon Pagenaud with another good result as well. So good work, good day for Team Penske.
I'd say driver of the day, Paul, you got to look at Robert Wiccans there in 8th place. That is phenomenal when you consider everything that he's had to adapt to make it happen today. Hats off to Robert Wiccans, a terrific result as we look further down in the water. Any surprises? Jimmie Johnson in 12th. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
On the lead lap.
Yeah, great job for Jimmie Johnson. But just to echo what you said about Wiccans, unbelievable job. Let's not forget, he was badly hurt in real life in a race car. He hasn't driven anything. No sim work, no nothing until 2 days ago. So the job that he did today is phenomenal. And this is the first step in getting back into a race car and recovering and getting his racing career back on track.
And we had double the amount of cars on the lead lap in comparison to just a week ago. There were only 7 cars on the lead lap from Watkins Glen. 14 cars finished on the lead lap here at Barber Motorsports Park today in a very eventful iRacing IndyCar Challenge event. And when we come back, we'll hear from the podium place getters on a very memorable day. back at Barber Motorsports Park, and the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama is done. And it was a spectacular race, thoroughly enjoyable. There was a lot going on all day long over the 45 laps of this second round of the iRacing IndyCar Challenge. Pleased to say it's the first here on NBCSN. And it's been great to have you here as we are quenching our thirst for racing in this coronavirus pandemic era. So it's good to get another one in. We're going to try and check in now with the race winner, Team Penske, Scott Mclaughlin. Scott, it's Lee Diffie here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Lee Diffie, can you hear me, mate?
I can indeed. Congratulations. Hey, you've got 44 career wins in the Australian Supercar Championship. You just got your first IndyCar win, albeit on iRacing.
Yeah, let's. I don't know whether it's a stat, but look, really happy. I actually brought in my the IndyCar engineer that I've been working with in the States, Jonathan Duguid. So I give him credit. He put me on an awesome strategy, and it's a bit better than me last week. I was playing with the fuel myself and trying to remember the numbers as I was driving, so it was a bit easier this week.
Hey, Scott, Paul Tracy, great job today. Unbelievable. For all the fans out there and the young fans that are looking to get into this iRacing, give us a rundown of your equipment, what you're using for all the young guys out there that are watching this and wanting to get involved.
Well, I started iRacing 10 years ago, Paul, and it was one of the best things I did. I think for an aspiring race driver coming up through the ranks, I think to be able to drive and keep sharp between races is fantastic, and that's what iRacing provides. You get to race, the best race drivers all over the world, including sim races. So I love it. I always have. I really think it's worth the investment in your future if you want to aspire and continue to be better. And when you get on the track in real life, you just feel that little bit ready that you can hit your points a bit better, you're a bit onto it, and it's been an awesome tool for me, and it's fun. It's great fun, and I enjoy it, and I always have.
Yeah, what's your equipment and setup that you have at home?
I've got a SimWorks.
He wants to tell you, Paul.
No.
I've got a SimWorks simulator. It's a good little rig. It's actually built for a touring car, so I'm sort of set up like a supercar at the moment. So it's not quite like the flashy IndyCar ones those boys got over in the States, but in regards to an IndyCar sim, but it's perfect for my supercar stuff. But then I can do the odd race online in the States as well.
And Scott, where are you racing from? Is it on the Gold Coast in Australia? You're at home right now?
Yeah, it's 10 to 6 in the morning on Sunday morning in Brisbane, Australia. So I haven't even looked outside to see what the weather's like.
Isn't it crazy that you're in Brisbane, Australia? Will Power, who you just beat, was in Troutman, North Carolina. Scott Speed, I think he lives in North Carolina as well. Alex Palau, who finished fourth, was in Girona, Spain. And Simon Pagenaud, your Team Penske teammate, he's in Cornelius, North Carolina. So all over the world, it doesn't matter. You guys put on a great show today. What was your general feeling about the race? There was quite a bit of mayhem out there.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was particularly nervous at the safety car restart, the first one after the caution. I had new tyres, but a lot of people didn't in front. We got a pretty good restart there, and it was a bit chaos. The biggest thing as well was lap traffic. Getting blocked lap traffic, and I think that enabled us to get that jump in the pits because I was in clear air for a long time where others weren't. So. Like I said, credit to Jonathan and his strategy. He put me out in front and put me in some clear air, and I was able to just bang lap times out lap after lap, which was awesome.
Can you still see our feed? And if you can, that's your win today. That's your prize. You get a virtual ring from Jostens, who has been a long-time supplier and jewelry partner of the NTT IndyCar Series. So Sage Karam got one last week. You get this virtual ring today. Congratulations again.
Perfect. No worries. I'll just have to work my butt off to try and get a real one day. We'll see.
There you go. That was a phenomenal win. And playing out a different strategy, Townsend, and that gamble, whether it was a gamble, it was just a clever strategy. And as Scott said, he was able to put his head down in that middle stint and just go for it.
Well, and you can see the difference 1 week makes. And Scott talked about it. trying to do fuel strategy on his own, race strategy on his own, and now he's got Team Penske fully engaged. All of the brain trust helping their drivers to optimize things against the rules, and that two-stop strategy just turned out to be the perfect medicine for a very challenging race today at Barber.
So, Paul, you can gauge from just chatting with Scott Mclaughlin there. He is having spent quite a bit of time with Scott. He is an incredibly mature young man for his age. He's well beyond his years. You can see there that, yes, we're talking about something in a virtual world, but these drivers take this very seriously, and that's a pretty intense 45 laps around Barber. He's a very calm, measured young man.
Yeah,
I don't know if you could hear it. But sorry, Paul. I was just going to say that I don't know if you could hear it, but a huge exhale from Paul Tracy Diff as he learned that McLaughlin's got 10 years in this, and Paul's Paul's about a week into it. So PT, patience, my friend. It's going to take you a while.
Yeah, I can tell just by listening to him now. He's as serious as a heart attack about this, and I think all of these guys, this is the new world, right? So if you're going to race in Indy cars, I believe that this is going to be the future of the off season for Indy cars. So you're going to have to get better. Sponsors are going to want to be involved in this. This is obviously a whole new world. So this is going to be a great opportunity for a lot of young drivers that don't race Indy cars to race against these guys, get experience, get to know the tracks, and it's amazing.
Well, we have on the line right now Sebastian Bourdais, and after having a pretty rough run of it last week, today was a more encouraging 13th place finish for the four-time IndyCar champion. Seb, tell us about your day.
It was a little hectic still. I don't know if you guys hear me. Yeah, it's good. But I mean, it's tough. That thing's really, really hard. Just making mistakes and running in pack. When you're already struggling a little bit to run some clean laps without making mistakes on your own, and then you're running clean in dirty air with a bunch of cars around that are also out of control, it makes it pretty exciting. But I'm glad we got that Receiver car through the day and on the lead lap, and at least we finished this one.
Hey, Sebastian,
it's Townsend. I had a question for you on your sim setup there, because as one of the more veteran drivers, you clearly have opted for the Barca Lounger comfort of the seat, but the steering wheel mount looks nice and stiff. So just talk us through your setup there. That's luxury and high performance all in one package.
Yeah, I think you want to see it. So I got thankfully Oliver Askew is not using the stuff that he was planning to use. So it's in our bedroom, and that's what it looks like. So it's got a nice little IKEA chair and $100 support for a very expensive wheel and pedal block, and then just a regular TV. That's it.
Hey, Seb, PT here. Hey, Seb, PT here. A lot of contact out there. It looks like you and I all over again. Guys with missing wings all over the place. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, man. The cars kind of slow down unpredictably, and it's just all eyes, and there's a lot of inertia, and you react to what you see. But a lot of times in those slow laps, there was contact at the back there with the checkups and things. It's a lot harder than it looks. That's for sure.
Seb, thanks so much. We're going to say farewell to you and congratulations. We're going to switch gears really quickly because we're almost out of time. Finishing in a phenomenal 8th place in his iRacing IndyCar Challenge debut is Robert Wiccans in the Lucas Oil Arrow McLaren SP entry. Robert, how was it to go racing again? Robert's here. We're just waiting. Was it good?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you. How was it?
You know what, Lee? My return to IndyCar was exactly how I imagined it. In my basement. No, I'm kidding. It was it was a ride. First off, I was so mad at myself in qualifying. I had an okay lap going. I was pretty handy-ish. I was en route to do a 106.6, and I spun out in the last corner, which I have never done the entire time I've been on the sim. And then that screwed up both laps. So I didn't do a lap. So I started last. And we made the bold strategy of trying to make it on the one stop under yellow. So I thought that was going to be my best race, primarily because when I was saving fuel, there's a better chance of me not spinning out. So we did massive fuel save the entire time, the whole race after that yellow flag, and we just made it with 0.02 gallons left at the finish line. So it was a good teamwork. It was great to have the Arrow McLaren SP engineer in my ear the whole time. It felt like, in a way, it felt like the real thing. My eyes are burning. I might need to invest in some of those blue light glasses. But I can't thank Simcraft enough for giving me this rig. I feel like I have an advantage on my competitors for the quality of sim that I have at home. So I'll take that in my pocket and keep working with these hand controls. I can't wait to try Max Pappas's steering wheel, his MPI steering wheel that I didn't get a chance to try before this race. But I'm just excited. My first race in St. Pete 2 years ago, all I did was a top 10, and I didn't get it. So I returned back. I got in the top 10. So I think that was a good day.
I think we're going to be calling a Robert Wiccans victory in sometime soon. We're just about to go off air, Robert. Look forward to seeing you next weekend. And I can tell you, folks, that next weekend we will go oval racing after 2 permanent road courses, Watkins, Glen and Barber Motorsports Park. Next week, it is Michigan International Speedway. How about that for the first oval in this iRacing IndyCar Challenge? This is fun, isn't it? It is a great way to go racing. And don't forget, starting Monday, it is Racing Week in America every day. All your favourite motor racing series on NBC Sports. On behalf of Townsend Bell, Paul Tracy, this is Lee Diffie. See you Monday.